Good morning, folks. This is Minister Edward Miller with Universal Life Church of Glynn. I am proud to, well, not super proud, but I'm proud to admit that we are in the last stage of, we're week 3 of the book of Acts. Um, Last week we talked about conversion, the conversion of Paul, uh, kosher foods, and the beginning of the split of the church. Um, so I'm going to dive right into the um, sermon today. We have family out of town, so sermon today starts off with a quote from Acts. Paul has persuaded many people that handmade gods aren't really gods at all, and he done this only here in Ephesus, but throughout the entire province. At this there was anger boiled, and they began shouting, "Greatest Artemis of Ephesians." Acts 19, verse 26 and 28. As Paul went to Ephesus and did his missionary work, became very successful. The problem here in Ephesus, Paul runs into idol-making lobbyists that make their money off of making silver idols of Artemis. Greek name, the Roman name, Diana, the goddess of war. Most of the citizens of Ephesus make their living off of Artemis, artisans making figurines of the goddess, and make uh, merchants sell them. Temple workers are ecstatic for all the attention that their goddess receives. But as Paul preaches, the idol-making business goes into a recession. As Paul starts to convert more people to the way, tension is starting to build as suppliers of silver and making idols decline. We can take the following for example. Demetrius, a silversmith czar who runs an idol manufacturing business, calls a meeting with everyone that is connected to the business of making idols, all the way up and connected to the business of making idols. I mean, this is all the way up and down the chain. He complains about the diminished respect of the idol making business and the loss of money. He's more worried about the loss of money than he's worried about the actual loss of people being interested in buying and making and buying these idols. So he has an ulterior motive here. He's trying to rile up all of these people that worship this goddess. He comes up with a plan that might get the others to follow him against Paul. He knows it's a start to get the others worked up as the as they are believers in the goddess of Artemis. He implies he is more concerned about spiritual matters than money, and he doesn't want to see Paul further erode the respect of the magnificent goddess. Magnificent. Now, a real quick history lesson here. We have to jump to today. Archaeologists found the name of Demetrius, though it though it could have been another man, listed as protectors of of the Ephesus temple. With this list of protectors, there was a list of silversmiths with an inscription on some of the prayers that reads, "May the guild of the silversmiths prosper." So it shows here that Demetrius, if this is the same man, was more interested that silversmiths. He was more interested in seeing the silversmiths prosper than seeing the goddess worship. So now that we have this information, we can imagine that this man Demetrius, being part of this guild, had a twofold motive to get rid of Paul in the region: money and religion. And this meeting quickly turns into a mob looking for Paul. They find Paul's associates and drag them into the amphitheater. Paul hears about this and wants to go out and meet the mob. This time, officials talk Paul out of this, and the mayor of the city goes to the theater and restores calm. He tells the mob that instead of risking Roman intervention and punishment, to go and file a formal complaint. This is when Paul decides it is time to move on and travels west to Greece, briefly visiting a congregation he started earlier, collecting offerings for believers suffering in Jerusalem. Riots encore. Quote, Jews from province of Asia, western Turkey, where Ephesus is located, saw Paul in the temple and roused a mob against him. Acts 21, verse 27. Paul is back in Jerusalem at the temple. He is starting his week of purification ritual. Back in those days, Paul, when in contact of Gentiles, this was a common practice. While doing this, Paul was seen by some of the people from Ephesus that caused the riot. This caused an uproar and incites another riot. The reason they felt Paul was unfit to worship at the temple. And they came up with two unfair charges. One, they claimed that he told all people to disobey Jewish laws when he actually only tells the Gentile believers that they are not bound by those traditions. Two, he is then charged of bringing a Gentile into the inter-temple courtyard reserved for Jews only. This is a crime punishable by death, period. They based this off information that he was seen with a Gentile earlier in the day. This was an incorrect assumption. They were saying it was a Gentile from Ephesus. Paul was sworn by the Jews almost immediately, and the Roman soldiers that are stationed at the fortress see this commotion and quickly arrest Paul to stop the riot. The next day, the Roman commander plans on taking Paul to the Jewish council for a hearing. The commander that learns that a group of about 40 Jews plan to ambush them that night as they escort Paul. He assembles a large military escort to protect Paul along the route. They decide to take a large military escort to protect Paul and deter the 40 Jews from attacking Paul along the route that they take. But the attack never came because it was deterred by the military presence. Paul is taken to Caesarea, Rome's headquarters in the Jewish homeland. This is located on the Mediterranean seacoast, 60 miles northwest of Jerusalem. The city is a Roman. Oh, excuse me. This city is a Roman city through and through. A little history on this city. Herod the Great built this city in honor of Caesar, decorating the landscape with a theater, palace, and temples to the Roman gods. Here, the Roman governor, Felix, agrees to hear Paul's case. 5 days later, the Jewish high priest arrives with scholars and his entourage. The spokesman for the group, acting much like a lawyer today, levels three charges against Paul. 1. We found this man to be a troublemaker who was constantly stirring up riots among the Jews all over the world. 2. He is the ringleader of a cult known as Nazarenes. 3. He is trying to desecrate the temple when we arrested him. Acts 24 verses 5 through 6. Paul admits to one of three charges, being a member of the way, but denies the other two. Felix decides to postpone his decision, saying he will wait until the Jerusalem commander arrives to testify. After 2 years, Paul is still in jail, and Felix continually sends for Paul. Felix was hoping, and I quote, that Paul would bribe him, so he sent for him quite often and talked with him. Acts 24, verse 26. Finally, after all of this time, Felix is replaced by Festus, and Paul gets a new trial and suggests trying Paul in Jerusalem, where Jews have planned to assassinate him. And at this, Paul decides to exercise his right as a Roman citizen to be tried in the highest court, the court ruled by Caesar. And I quote, very, very well, Festus says. You have appealed to Caesar, and to Caesar you will go. Acts 25, verse 12. Rough sailing. I quote, a wind of a typhoon strength called northeaster burst across the island and blew out to sea. Acts verse 27, verse 14. Paul is escorted by Roman soldiers, and they set sail in late summer or early fall, as far as we can tell. This is near the end of safe sea travel for that year. The winds that Paul needs to reach his destination are called Artesian winds. These winds blow from the northwest, and are a little earlier in the sailing season and are usually towards the time they set sail. The distance they would have to travel are close to 2,000 miles, which means that they would have to find safe harbor somewhere during mid-travel unless they were, were to face possible terrible seas. Excuse me, the soldier in charge of the trip arranges the trip on the Egyptian grain ship that has that had a that had a 276 passenger manifest. This comes into play a little bit later on in the sermon here. Now, they weren't even on the sea one day when they reached Myria, which is on the south coast of today's Turkey. This, this is already the Day of Atonement after October 5th. This is if Paul's trip takes place in AD 59, like some scholars believe. This is well into the risky season for sailing, but the captain decides to press on towards Crete. Crete is the halfway point in Paul's voyage. Paul, a well-sailed missionary, tries to warn the soldiers guarding him to winter in a port called Fair Havens. But the captain of the ship disagrees and wants to port in a better protected port on the western side of the island called Phoenix, so he presses on following the coastline. But as they travel trying to make it to Phoenix, a northeaster hits the ship. As the ship is hit with the storm, it is pushed southwest toward the Citrus Major. These are put these are treacherous shallows near North Africa, off the coast of what is called today Libya. From what we can tell, in theology, the crew tries to drop anchor to slow the drive. This is when the winds shift and push the boat northwest towards Paul's destination. Now, this is what's important. Paul's ship runs aground 2 weeks after the storm began along the coast of the island of Malta, south of Italy and Sicily. As the ship has run aground, the strong waves splinter the boat. But an amazing thing happened. Not a single life was lost. All 276 passengers survived. About 3 months later, in the spring of AD 60, which is the beginning of the new sailing season, Paul and his guards set sail on another Alexandrian ship. There were two more stops along the way. Then they were delivered to a small town called Puteoli. From there they marched forward to Rome. Paul is put under house arrest for 2 years but is allowed to preach. This is where the book of Acts abruptly ends without telling us what happens to Paul. Now here comes some speculation and theology. Some think Paul was tried in AD 62 after the end of the book of Acts and was executed. There is another idea from early Christian leaders. Some say that he was released and yet and yet made another journey. And I quote, I will come to see you on my way to Spain. Romans 15:28. He wrote this to believers in Rome. In AD 96, the Roman bishop Clement confirmed that Paul went to the limits of the west, implying Spain on the empire western perimeter. If this is what happened, Paul was probably arrested a second time, taken to Rome once again, executed perhaps during the persecutions that started after Nero blamed Christians for the burning of Rome in AD 64. This last part of what I wrote in the sermon is part of theology, but the leaps and bounds that Paul made for the church with his missionaries and what is actually written in the book of Acts are amazing things that we find about the early church. I hope these three sermons reach someone on a personal level. What Paul goes throughout the book of Acts is an amazing story, and at times followed by trouble. Here is a tidbit. Second Timothy was written during Paul's second Roman imprisonment in AD 64 through 67. I know the years mismatch here, but it's believed AD 64 through 67. Paul is believed to have written half the books in the New Testament. There are a few different Christian traditions in regarding to how Paul died, but the most commonly accepted one comes from the writings of Eusebius, an early church historian. Eusebius claimed that Paul was beheaded by order of the Roman Emperor Nero or one of his subordinates. Paul's martyrdom occurred shortly after much of Rome burned in a fire, an event that Nero blamed on early Christians. Matthew 16, verse 18 through 19, I quote, you are Peter. This is something I wanted in close. You are Peter. This is separate. I wanted to close out on this. It's very, very important to me. You are Peter, a stone, and upon this rock I will build my church, and all the powers of hell shall not prevail against it. And I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. Whatever doors you lock on earth shall be locked in heaven, and whatever doors you open on earth shall be opened in heaven. Amen. I hope you all have a good week until next week's sermon. It's going to be a sermon on Ruth. And may God bless you, watch over you, and protect you all this week. May He guide your hands, guide your week. And whatever troubles you may have, may He guide you through them. Do not forget to praise Him. Good luck and bad luck, for He will get you through anything that may happen to you this week. God bless, and God's love be with you.